The rhythmic tap of a chisel on ivory is the only sound in the quiet studio, a gentle, percussive whisper against the stillness. Here on the island of Cyprus, a sculptor named Pygmalion has retreated from the world. He has grown weary of the flaws and failings he sees in mortal women, and so he has turned inward, finding his sanctuary not in company, but in creation. His workshop has become a world unto itself, a place of pure intention where the only relationship that matters is the one between his hands and the form emerging from the stone. But when does such devotion cross the fragile line into obsession? Pygmalion is about to discover the answer, as he begins to carve the features of a woman so perfect she could only exist in a dream. His studio was not a place of clutter, but a chapel of calm. Sunlight, softened by a linen cloth draped over the high window, fell in a warm pool upon the central pedestal. Ivory dust motes danced in the light like tiny stars, settling on the tools laid out with reverence, each file, each gouge, each polishing cloth waiting for its purpose. This was Pygmalion's sacred space, insulated from the noise and imperfection of the world beyond its walls. Here, the only flaws were those he could carve away, the only intentions were his own. And so he began his great work, not as a simple commission, but as an act of profound devotion. He did not merely sculpt, he coaxed. His chisel was not an instrument of force, but an extension of his most delicate touch. He would spend hours on the curve of a single lip, wanting to capture not just a smile, but the suggestion of a breath about to be taken. He shaped the gentle slope of a shoulder, the elegant line of a neck, the graceful fall of hair that seemed to ripple with a life of its own. The process was slow, meditative. With every stroke, he was not removing ivory, but revealing the spirit he believed lay hidden within the white, unyielding block. Yet a quiet paradox began to grow alongside his creation. The more perfect the statue became, the more profound his isolation grew. He had sought to create a companion in beauty, but in doing so, he had shut out all other companionship. He would speak to the figure as he worked, his voice a low murmur in the quiet room. He would ask her opinion on the day's light, or comment on the scent of the sea carried on the afternoon breeze. The silence that answered was not empty. To him, it was a listening silence, full of potential. When the final touch was complete, he stepped back, and his breath caught. There she stood, a woman of impossible perfection, her ivory skin seemingly glowing from within. Her beauty was so complete, so serene that it felt less like something he had made and more like something he had discovered. Art had concealed art so completely that the line between the crafted and the living grew thin and luminous. In that moment, artistic pride evaporated, replaced by something deeper, more terrifying, and more wonderful. He was captivated, utterly and completely. This captivation soon blossomed into a profound, living love. His daily rituals changed. He began to bring gifts, as one would court a beloved, smooth, sun-warmed pebbles from the shore, strands of sea glass in hues of aquamarine and gold, garlands of fresh flowers whose petals he would lay gently in her ivory hands. He dressed her in fine silks, the soft rustle of the fabric a new sound in the studio, and placed delicate silver bracelets around her wrists. He would lay her upon a couch draped in Tyrian purple, her head resting on soft pillows, and speak to her of his dreams and his solitude. The shift was subtle but absolute. He was no longer a sculptor admiring his masterpiece. He was a man in love with a silent woman. This strange, beautiful existence continued as the seasons turned, until the air on Cyprus began to change. The festival of Aphrodite was approaching. The scent of incense and salt, of celebration and ancient power, began to drift through the streets of Paphos. For the first time in a long time, Pygmalion felt a pull from outside his sanctuary. The world was calling him to the altar of the goddess of love, and he knew with a trembling heart that he had a prayer to make. The festival was a symphony of sensory delight. The air hummed with the low chanting of priests and the murmur of the crowd. Pygmalion moved through the throng, a solitary figure amidst the celebration. He watched as heifers with gilded horns were led to the altar, their breath pluming in the cool morning air. When the moment came, he stepped forward, the smoke of the offerings stinging his eyes. He stood before the great altar, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm against his ribs. He hesitated, his prayer caught in his throat. How could he voice such an impossible wish? To ask for a woman like his ivory maiden felt like a betrayal of the unique love he felt. But to ask for the maiden herself, that was to ask for a miracle. He finally whispered his plea, his words barely audible over the crackle of the sacred flames. "You gods, all gifts are within your power. Grant me to wed a woman resembling my ivory maiden." He could not bring himself to say the truth aloud, but the goddess, present at her own celebration, understood the longing in his heart. As a sign, the flames on the altar leaped high, flaring 3 times into the sky, a silent, divine acknowledgement. Returning to his studio, the familiar space felt charged with a new energy. The silence was different, expectant. He approached the couch where his love lay and, as he had done 1,000 times before, he bent to kiss her. But this time his lips did not meet cold, unyielding ivory. There was a yielding softness, a warmth that shocked him. He pulled back, his eyes wide. He pressed his lips to hers again, and then his fingers went to her arms, stroking them gently. The ivory was losing its hardness, softening like beeswax warmed by the sun. It yielded beneath his touch, sinking and becoming pliant. Astonishment and a dizzying, doubtful joy flooded through him. He was afraid he might be deluding himself, that his longing had finally overwhelmed his senses. He touched her again, his hands moving over the form he knew so well. And then he felt it, the faint, unmistakable throb of a pulse beneath his fingertips. The ivory was not just softening, it was transforming into living flesh. Warmth radiated from her, and the silk he had dressed her in rustled softly as her chest rose with her first, tentative breath. Her eyes fluttered open, adjusting to the soft light of the studio. They were no longer blank ivory orbs, but deep and clear, reflecting the world for the first time. She saw the face of her creator against the sky beyond the window, and a blush rose to her new-made cheeks. There was no fear in her gaze, only a dawning recognition, a silent understanding of the profound connection between them. It was not a moment of possession, but of mutual awakening. The hero of Paphos, overcome, pressed his lips to the lips of a living woman, and she returned his kiss. The line between devotion and life had not been crossed. It had dissolved entirely in the breath of the goddess. In the ancient world, ivory was a substance of rare purity, a material that spoke of distant lands and untouchable beauty. It was the perfect medium for Pygmalion's vision, for it held a luminous quality, a cold fire that seemed to wait for warmth. And Cyprus, this island born from the sea foam that cradled the goddess Aphrodite herself, was the perfect stage. Here, the very air is thick with the energy of creation and love, where the boundaries between the divine and the mortal have always felt thin and permeable. This myth asks us a quiet question about the nature of devotion itself. Pygmalion's love began as an obsession with an ideal, a retreat from the messy reality of human connection. But the goddess did not grant him possession of a perfect object. She fulfilled his devotion by transforming it, breathing life into his creation so that the love could become a conversation, a shared existence. The initial solitary obsession was a closed circle, but the fulfilled love that followed was an open door. It was a love born not of finding someone perfect, but of nurturing something so completely that it could not help but come to life. In the quiet aftermath, as the ocean breeze whispered through the studio, the sculptor and his statue were no longer creator and creation. They were simply two souls, bound by a love that had crossed the most impossible of boundaries. And so they lived, the man who carved his love from ivory, and the woman who awoke to his touch, their story a gentle reminder of the luminous line between devotion and life itself. May this tale bring you a quiet heart and peaceful dreams. And we hope you'll join us again soon for another journey into the past.